The bitter wind howled through the streets of Park City, Utah. On that December morning in 1878, when Katherine Ruth walked into Henderson's general store with her last $5 clutched in her trembling hand, knowing it would not be enough to see her through the winter. Katherine had moved to Park City 3 months earlier after her father's death, leaving behind the ruined farm in Missouri that had claimed his life through exhaustion and heartbreak. She was 22 years old, alone in a mining town where silver had brought fortune to some and desperation to others. She had found work as a seamstress, mending clothes for miners and their families, but the work was scarce and the pay meager. Now, with snow already covering the mountains and temperatures dropping every night, she faced a winter that might very well kill her if she could not buy enough supplies to survive. The general store smelled of wood smoke, coffee, and dried herbs. Katherine stepped inside, grateful for the warmth from the pot-bellied stove in the corner, and pulled her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders. Her dress, once a respectable blue calico, had been patched so many times that it was difficult to tell which fabric was original. Her boots, inherited from her father, were too large and stuffed with newspaper to make them fit. Mr. Henderson stood behind the counter, his round face impassive as he watched her approach. He was a practical man, a businessman who had survived in Park City by extending credit sparingly and collecting debts ruthlessly. Katherine had bought from him before, always paying in full, but he knew as well as she did that $5 would not cover what she needed. "Good morning, Mr. Henderson," Katherine said, her voice steady despite the anxiety twisting in her stomach. "I need to buy some supplies. Flour, beans, salt pork, lamp oil, and firewood if you have any to spare." Henderson nodded slowly, pulling out a pencil and paper to calculate. His fingers moved across the paper, adding numbers while Katherine stood silently, watching. When he finished, he looked up at her with eyes that held no sympathy. "That comes to $18.40, he said flatly. Katherine had expected this, but hearing the number spoken aloud still made her heart sink. She placed her $5 on the counter carefully, as if the bills might tear. "I have $5 now. I was hoping you might extend me credit for the rest. I have more sewing work coming in after the new year, and I promise I will pay you back by February." Henderson shook his head before she even finished speaking. "No credit, Miss Ruth. Not anymore. Too many folks in this town already owe me money, and winter makes people forgetful about their debts. Cash only." "Please," Katherine said, and she hated the desperation that crept into her voice. "I would not ask if it were not absolutely necessary. I have no family here, no one to help me. Without these supplies, I do not know how I will make it through January, let alone the whole winter." "That is not my problem," Henderson replied, his tone unchanged. "I am running a business, not a charity. You can buy what $5 will get you, and that is all." Katherine felt the heat rise to her cheeks, a mixture of shame and anger. She knew there were people in this town who owed Henderson far more than $13.40, people who had connections and influence that she lacked. But she was alone, a woman with no husband and no prospects, and that made her invisible to men like Henderson. $5 will not even buy enough flour to last me through Christmas," she said quietly. "How do you expect me to survive?" Henderson shrugged. "That is your concern, Miss Ruth. Now, do you want to buy something or not? I have other customers waiting." Katherine glanced behind her and saw that the store was empty. She turned back to Henderson, her jaw tight with anger she could not express. She was about to gather her $5 and leave when the door opened behind her, letting in a gust of cold air and snow. "Morning, Henderson," a deep voice said, and Katherine turned to see a tall man stepping into the store, stamping snow from his boots. He was around 27 or 28 years old, with dark hair that curled at his collar and sharp blue eyes that took in everything with a quick glance. He wore a heavy sheepskin coat, leather gloves, and a hat that had seen better days. A cowboy, Katherine thought, though he looked more prosperous than most of the drifters who passed through town. "Morning, Ryder," Henderson said, his tone considerably warmer than it had been with Katherine. "What can I do for you?" Ryder Hartford pulled off his gloves and approached the counter, his gaze moving between Henderson and Katherine. "I could not help but overhear your conversation," he said, his voice calm and measured. "Seems like this lady needs some supplies." Henderson's expression hardened. "This is a private matter, Hartford." "Is it?" Ryder looked at Katherine, and she saw something in his eyes that she had not seen in weeks, genuine concern. "Miss, how much do you need?" Katherine hesitated, unsure if she should answer. She did not know this man, did not know what he wanted in return. In her experience, men rarely offered help without expecting something back. But desperation made her bold. $18.40 worth of supplies, she said quietly. "I have $5. Ryder nodded and reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a leather wallet. He counted out $15 and placed them on the counter next to Katherine's $5. "There you go, Henderson. Ring up the lady's order." Henderson's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at the money, then at Ryder, then at Katherine. "Hartford, you do not even know this woman." "That is true," Ryder agreed. "But I know what winter in Park City is like, and I know no one should go without food and heat because they are a few dollars short." He turned to Katherine, and his expression was open, honest. "Consider it a loan, miss. You can pay me back when you are able." Katherine stared at him, her mind racing. She did not understand why this stranger would help her, what he could possibly gain from such generosity. "I cannot accept this," she said, though every fiber of her being wanted to take the money and run. "I do not even know you, and I do not know when I will be able to pay you back." Ryder smiled, and it transformed his face from serious to approachable. "My name is Ryder Hartford. I run a small cattle ranch about 5 miles north of town. As for payment, do not worry about the money. Pay me back with friendship instead." Katherine blinked, certain she had misheard. "Friendship, friendship," Ryder confirmed. "I have been in Park City for 2 years now, and I do not know many folks in town. You look like you could use a friend, and so could I. So consider the debt paid if you will just accept my friendship and maybe have a conversation with me now and then. That is all I ask." Henderson snorted. "That is the most foolish business transaction I have ever heard." "Good thing it is not your business then," Ryder said mildly. He looked at Katherine, waiting for her answer. Katherine's throat tightened with emotion. She had been alone for so long, struggling in silence, that this simple act of kindness felt overwhelming. She did not trust easily, not after everything she had been through, but something in Ryder's eyes told her he was sincere. And even if he was not, she needed those supplies too badly to refuse. "All right," she said softly. "I accept, and thank you, Mr. Hartford. I do not know how to express my gratitude." "Ryder," he corrected. "Friends do not use Mr., and you are welcome, miss." Katherine Ruth, Katherine," Ryder repeated as if testing how the name felt. "Well, Katherine, let Henderson fill your order, and then I will help you carry everything back to your place. It is too cold for you to be hauling supplies through town alone." Henderson, grumbling under his breath, began gathering Katherine's items from the shelves. Katherine watched in a daze as he measured out flour and beans, wrapped salt pork in brown paper, and filled a container with lamp oil. He added a small bundle of firewood to the order, and Katherine felt tears prick at her eyes. She would be warm tonight. She would be able to eat. While Henderson worked, Ryder leaned against the counter beside Katherine, his posture relaxed. "Have you been in Park City long?" he asked conversationally. "3 months," Katherine replied. "I came from Missouri after my father passed away. I am a seamstress by trade, though work has been slow lately." "Missouri is a long way to travel alone," Ryder observed. "You are brave." Katherine shook her head. "Not brave, desperate. There was nothing left for me there. My mother died when I was young and my father's farm failed. I had heard there was work in the mining towns out west, so I came here hoping to start over." "And has it worked out the way you hoped?" Katherine gave him a wry smile. "Does standing in a general store begging for credit sound like things have worked out?" Ryder laughed, a warm sound that filled the store. "Fair point. But things have a way of changing when you least expect it. Maybe your luck is turning." "Maybe," Katherine said, though she did not quite believe it. Henderson finished packing Katherine's supplies into 2 canvas bags and set them on the counter with a thump. "There you go, all paid for." His tone suggested he disapproved of the entire situation. Ryder picked up both bags without apparent effort. "Lead the way, Katherine." Katherine took her $5 back from the counter, tucking them safely into her dress pocket, and led Ryder out of the store. The wind hit them immediately, sharp and biting, and Katherine pulled her shawl over her head. The streets of Park City were quiet, most people staying indoors to avoid the cold. Snow crunched under their boots as they walked. "I am staying in a boarding house on 3rd Street, Katherine said, raising her voice to be heard over the wind. "Mrs. Morrison's place. Do you know it?" "I know it," Ryder confirmed. "I have delivered cattle to Mrs. Morrison before. She is a good woman." They walked in silence for a few minutes, Katherine acutely aware of the tall cowboy beside her. He moved with a confidence that came from physical strength and competence, and she found herself stealing glances at him when she thought he was not looking. He was handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw and laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. His coat and boots were well made but worn, the mark of someone who worked hard and lived simply. "Why did you help me?" Katherine asked suddenly, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. "You do not know me. For all you know, I could be a terrible person." Ryder considered the question as they turned onto 3rd Street. "I helped you because you needed help and I was able to give it. That is reason enough for me. As for whether you are a terrible person, I will take my chances. You did not strike me as terrible in the store. Scared, maybe. Proud. But not terrible." "I was both scared and proud," Katherine admitted. "I hate asking for help. I hate feeling like I cannot take care of myself." "There is no shame in needing help," Ryder said firmly. "Everyone needs help sometimes. I have been where you are, new to a place with nothing but hope and determination. If someone had not helped me when I first came west, I would not have the ranch I have now." "Someone helped you," Ryder nodded. "An old rancher named Tom Gibson. I was 18 years old, fresh off a cattle drive from Texas, and I did not know anything about running a ranch. Tom took me on as a hand, taught me everything he knew. When he died 5 years ago, he left me his land and his cattle. Said I had been a good friend to him in his final years, and he wanted to make sure the ranch went to someone who would care for it." Katherine felt a lump form in her throat. "That is a beautiful story." "It is why I believe in friendship," Ryder said. "Tom did not have any family. I was not related to him by blood, but we were friends, real friends, and that mattered more than anything else. So when I said I wanted your friendship in exchange for paying your bill, I meant it. I was not just being charitable." They reached Mrs. Morrison's boarding house, a 2-story structure with peeling paint and sagging shutters. Katherine led Ryder around to the back entrance, where a narrow staircase led up to her room. "I am on the 2nd floor," she explained. Third door on the right. Ryder followed her up the stairs, the canvas bags swinging from his hands. Katherine unlocked her door and pushed it open, revealing a small room with a narrow bed, a rickety table and chair, a washstand, and a tiny stove in the corner. It was cold, the stove having gone out hours ago, and Katherine felt a wave of embarrassment at the poverty of her circumstances. "You can set the bags on the table," she said quietly, moving to light the stove. Ryder set the bags down and looked around the room without judgment. "You have made it cozy," he said diplomatically. "Better than some places I have stayed." Katherine managed a small smile as she coaxed the stove back to life. "You are kind to say so, but we both know this is a miserable little room. Still, it is mine, and it is warm enough when I can afford firewood." Ryder helped her unpack the supplies, stacking the flour and beans in the corner, hanging the salt pork from a hook on the wall to keep it away from rats, and setting the lamp oil on the table. When everything was put away, he stood awkwardly near the door, as if unsure whether to stay or go. "Would you like some tea?" Katherine offered, suddenly desperate for him not to leave. It had been so long since she had a real conversation with anyone, and Ryder's presence made the room feel less empty. "I would love some tea," Ryder said, his face brightening. "If you are sure you do not mind the company." "I do not mind at all," Katherine assured him. She filled her battered kettle with water from the pitcher on the washstand and set it on the stove to heat. "I must warn you, though, I do not have much to offer. Just tea and some stale bread." "Tea is perfect," Ryder said. He pulled out the chair and sat down, his long legs stretched out in front of him. "Tell me about your sewing work. What kind of things do you make?" Katherine busied herself preparing the tea, grateful to have something to do with her hands. "Mostly mending," she said. "Miners are hard on their clothes, and their wives bring me torn shirts and pants to fix. Sometimes I make simple dresses or children's clothes. I can do fancier work, embroidery and such, but there is not much call for that here." "You enjoy it?" Katherine thought about the question. "I enjoy the work itself. There is something satisfying about taking something broken and making it whole again. But I do not enjoy the struggle of finding enough work to survive. I thought there would be more opportunities in a town like Park City." "The winter is always slow," Ryder said. "Things will pick up in the spring when more people start moving through town. You just have to make it until then." "That is what I am trying to do," Katherine said. The kettle began to whistle, and she poured the hot water over the tea leaves in 2 chipped cups. She handed one to Ryder and sat on the edge of her bed, the only other place to sit in the small room. They drank their tea in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the warmth spreading through Katherine's cold fingers. She studied Ryder over the rim of her cup, wondering what kind of man he really was. He seemed genuine, but she had been fooled before. Men could be charming when they wanted something. "What are you thinking?" Ryder asked, catching her staring. Katherine felt her cheeks heat. "I am wondering why a man like you is not married," she said boldly. "You have a ranch. You are clearly kind and generous, and you are not unpleasant to look at. Surely there are women in Park City who would be interested." Ryder laughed, almost choking on his tea. "Not unpleasant to look at. That is quite the compliment." "You know what I mean," Katherine said, smiling despite herself. "I suppose I do," Ryder agreed. "The truth is, I have not had much time for courting. Running a ranch takes up most of my days, and when I do come into town, I am usually just buying supplies or selling cattle. I have met a few women, but nothing ever seemed to fit. I want what Tom and his wife had before she died. A real partnership based on friendship and respect, not just convenience or loneliness." "That sounds wonderful," Katherine said softly. "My parents had that kind of marriage. Even when things were hard, even when the farm was failing, they had each other. I always hoped I would find something like that someday. What is stopping you? Katherine gestured around the room. Look at me. I am living in a boarding house, barely scraping by, with no family and no prospects. What man would want to marry someone in my situation? A man with sense would, Ryder said firmly. You are intelligent, hardworking, and brave enough to start over in a strange town. Those are qualities that matter a lot more than how much money you have in your pocket. Katherine felt tears threaten again, and she blinked them away angrily. You do not know me well enough to say that. Then let me get to know you, Ryder said. That was our agreement, remember? Friendship. I want to be your friend, Katherine, if you will let me. Katherine looked into his blue eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. Against all her instincts, against the walls she had built around her heart, she found herself nodding. All right, friends. Ryder's smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. Good. Then as your friend, I would like to invite you to dinner at my ranch this Sunday. Nothing fancy, just a simple meal. I promise I am a decent cook. I do not know, Katherine hesitated. It would not be proper for me to visit your ranch unchaperoned. Bring Mrs. Morrison if that would make you feel better, Ryder suggested. Or I could invite some of my ranch hands to join us. I do not want you to feel uncomfortable. Katherine considered the invitation. Part of her wanted to refuse to maintain her independence and pride. But another part, the lonely part that had been silent for too long, desperately wanted to accept. Could I bring something? I feel like I should contribute. You do not have to bring anything, Ryder assured her. But if you want to, I would never turn down fresh bread or pie. I can make bread, Katherine said. Not pie, unfortunately. I do not have the ingredients. Bread would be wonderful. Ryder finished his tea and stood, reaching for his hat. I should get going. I have work waiting at the ranch, but I will see you Sunday. Around noon. Sunday at noon, Katherine confirmed, standing as well. She walked him to the door, suddenly reluctant to see him leave. Thank you again, Ryder. For everything. You saved my life today, whether you realize it or not. Ryder's expression grew serious. You would have found a way to survive, Katherine. People like you always do. I just made it a little easier. He tipped his hat to her. Stay warm. And if you need anything before Sunday, you know where to find me. After he left, Katherine stood in her room for a long time, staring at the supplies stacked in the corner. She thought about Ryder's kindness, his easy smile, the way he had treated her with respect when Henderson had treated her like a nuisance. She thought about his invitation, about the possibility of friendship, maybe even more than friendship someday. For the first time in months, Katherine felt something other than fear and desperation. She felt hope. The next few days passed slowly for Katherine. She threw herself into her sewing work, determined to earn enough money to eventually repay Ryder despite his protests that friendship was payment enough. She mended 3 shirts for a miner's wife, hemmed 2 dresses for Mrs. Morrison, and even managed to get a commission to make a christening gown for a baby due in the spring. The work kept her hands busy, but her mind kept drifting to Sunday, to Ryder, to the warmth in his eyes when he smiled at her. Saturday evening, Katherine used some of her precious flour to make 2 loaves of bread, kneading the dough with more care than usual. She wanted the bread to be perfect, wanted to show Ryder that she was capable and skilled, that his faith in her was not misplaced. She shaped the loaves, let them rise by the stove, and baked them until they were golden brown. The smell filled her small room, making her stomach growl with hunger, but she resisted the urge to cut into one. These were for Ryder. Sunday morning dawned clear and cold. Katherine dressed in her best dress, a gray wool that had belonged to her mother. She had altered it to fit her smaller frame, and though it was old-fashioned, it was clean and neatly pressed. She brushed her long brown hair until it shone, then twisted it into a simple bun at the nape of her neck. She looked at herself in the small mirror above her washstand and tried to see what Ryder might see. A thin face with high cheekbones, gray eyes that had seen too much hardship, lips that had forgotten how to smile easily. She was not beautiful, she knew, but perhaps she was not entirely plain either. At 11:30, Katherine wrapped the bread in a clean cloth, put on her shawl, and left the boarding house. Mrs. Morrison had been scandalized when Katherine mentioned her plans, insisting that it was improper for a young woman to visit a bachelor's ranch alone. But Katherine had stood firm, explaining that Ryder was a friend and she trusted him. In truth, she was not entirely sure if she trusted him, but she wanted to. She wanted to believe that there were still good people in the world. The walk to Ryder's ranch took about an hour. Katherine followed the road north out of town, past the last few scattered houses and into the open country. The landscape was beautiful in its starkness, with snow-covered mountains rising in the distance and scrub brush poking through the white ground. The sky was a brilliant blue, the kind of blue that only existed in the West, and the air was so cold that Katherine's breath formed clouds. She saw the ranch long before she reached it. Ryder's property consisted of a sturdy log house with a stone chimney, a large barn, several corrals, and a few outbuildings. Cattle dotted the snowy fields, their dark forms standing out against the white. Smoke rose from the chimney, a welcoming sign that someone was home. As Katherine approached, Ryder emerged from the house, waving. He wore denim pants, a flannel shirt, and a leather vest, his sleeves rolled up despite the cold. "You made it," he called, striding toward her with a grin. "I was starting to worry you had changed your mind." "I would not do that," Katherine said, slightly breathless from the walk. "I said I would come, and I keep my word." "I am learning that about you," Ryder said warmly. He noticed the bundle in her arms. "Is that bread? It smells incredible." "I hope it tastes as good as it smells," Katherine said, handing him the bundle. "I am a bit out of practice. If it is half as good as that tea you made, it will be perfect." Ryder gestured toward the house. "Come inside. I have been cooking all morning, and I think I might have overdone it." "I hope you are hungry." Katherine followed him into the house, and her first impression was one of warmth and comfort. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large fireplace dominating one wall. A wooden table stood in the center of the room, already set for two with simple plates and utensils. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books and practical items. A door on the far wall led to what Katherine assumed was a bedroom. It was a modest home, but it felt lived in and cared for. "This is lovely," Katherine said sincerely. "Did you build this yourself?" "Tom built most of it, but I have added on over the years," Ryder explained. He set the bread on the table and moved to the stove, where several pots were simmering. "I hope you like venison stew." "I shot the deer last week, and the meat has been stewing since this morning. I also made biscuits, though they might not be as good as your bread." "It all smells wonderful," Katherine said. She removed her shawl and hung it on a peg by the door, then hesitated, unsure where to sit or what to do with her hands. Ryder noticed her discomfort and smiled. "Make yourself at home. Would you like something to drink? I have coffee, water, or cider." "Coffee would be wonderful," Katherine said. She sat at the table, watching as Ryder moved efficiently around the kitchen. He poured 2 cups of coffee, then ladled stew into bowls and placed them on the table along with a plate of biscuits. He sat across from her, his eyes bright with anticipation. "This is the first time I have had a guest for dinner since I have lived here," Ryder admitted. "I hope everything is all right." "It is more than all right," Katherine assured him. She tasted the stew and closed her eyes in pleasure. This is delicious, Ryder. Really delicious. Ryder looked pleased. I am glad. I was worried I might have oversalted it. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the clink of spoons against bowls. Katherine felt herself relaxing, the tension that had been her constant companion for months beginning to ease. There was something about Ryder's presence that made her feel safe, as if the world outside could not touch her as long as she was here. "Tell me about your ranch," Katherine said after a while. "How many cattle do you have?" "About 200 head right now," Ryder replied. "I sell some every fall to raise money for the winter, then buy more in the spring. It is not a big operation, but it is enough to support me and pay my ranch hands." "How many hands do you have?" "3. They are all out checking on the cattle today, making sure none have wandered off or gotten into trouble. The winter is hard on the herd, so we have to keep a close eye on them." Katherine nodded, impressed. "It sounds like a lot of work." "It is, but I love it," Ryder said, his face lighting up. "There is something about working with the land, raising animals, knowing that you are creating something with your own hands. It is hard, but it is honest." "I understand that," Katherine said. "That is how I feel about sewing. Every stitch is something I made, something I can point to and say I did that." "Exactly," Ryder agreed. They smiled at each other, a moment of connection that felt deeper than words. After they finished eating, Ryder insisted on slicing Katherine's bread. He spread butter on a thick piece and took a bite, his eyes widening. "Katherine, this is the best bread I have ever tasted. I am serious." "What did you do to it?" Katherine laughed, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "It is just bread. I did not do anything special." "You did something special," Ryder insisted. "This is incredible." He ate the entire slice, then cut another. "I might eat this whole loaf." "I brought 2 loaves," Katherine reminded him. "One for today and one for you to keep." "You are trying to spoil me," Ryder teased. "I could get used to this." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Ryder told Katherine about his childhood in Texas, growing up on a cattle drive with his father, who died when Ryder was 16. Katherine told him about Missouri, about her mother's death from fever when Katherine was 12, about learning to sew from a neighbor woman who took pity on the motherless girl. They talked about books they had read, places they wanted to see, dreams they had for the future. As the sun began to set, Katherine realized with a start that she had been at the ranch for nearly 6 hours. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "It will be dark soon, and I do not want to walk back to town in the dark." "Let me drive you," Ryder offered immediately. "I have a wagon, and it will be faster than walking." Katherine wanted to refuse to maintain her independence, but the thought of the long, cold walk made her nod. "If you are sure it is not too much trouble." "It is no trouble at all," Ryder assured her. "Give me a few minutes to hitch up the horses." While Ryder was outside preparing the wagon, Katherine stood in the warm house, looking around one last time. She could picture herself living here, cooking at that stove, sitting by that fire, sleeping in that bedroom. The thought scared her with its intensity. She barely knew Ryder, had only met him a few days ago, yet she was already imagining a life with him. It was foolish, dangerous even. She could not afford to let her guard down, could not afford to hope for things that might never happen. But when Ryder came back inside, his cheeks flushed from the cold, his eyes warm with kindness, Katherine could not help the smile that spread across her face. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," Katherine confirmed. The wagon ride back to town was peaceful, the horses plodding steadily through the snow while Katherine and Ryder sat side by side on the bench. Ryder had draped a thick blanket over both of them, and Katherine was acutely aware of the warmth of his body next to hers. The stars were beginning to appear, bright pinpricks in the darkening sky. "I had a wonderful time today," Katherine said softly. "Thank you for inviting me." "I had a wonderful time too," Ryder replied. "We should do this again. Maybe next Sunday." Katherine hesitated. "I do not want to impose on you every week." "It is not imposing if I am inviting you," Ryder pointed out. "Besides, I thought we were friends. Friends spend time together." "We are friends," Katherine agreed, the word feeling both comforting and insufficient. She wanted to be friends with Ryder, but she also wanted more. She wanted things she had no right to want, things that seemed impossible given her circumstances. They reached the boarding house too soon. Ryder helped Katherine down from the wagon, his hand strong and steady on her waist. "I will see you next Sunday," he asked hopefully. "Yes," Katherine said, making a decision. "Next Sunday, and Ryder, thank you for everything. You have given me more than supplies. You have given me hope." Ryder's expression grew tender. "You gave yourself hope, Katherine." "I just reminded you it was there." He tipped his hat to her. "Sleep well." Katherine watched the wagon disappear down the street, then climbed the stairs to her room. She lit her lamp and sat on her bed, her mind replaying every moment of the day. She thought about Ryder's laughter, the way he listened when she spoke, the kindness in his eyes. She thought about his ranch, about the life he had built with his own hands. And for the first time since her father's death, Katherine allowed herself to dream about the future. The next Sunday came, and Katherine returned to the ranch. Then the next Sunday, and the next. December turned to January, and their friendship deepened with each visit. Ryder taught Katherine how to ride a horse, a gentle mare named Daisy who seemed to understand that Katherine was nervous. Katherine taught Ryder more complicated sewing stitches, and he surprised her by being a quick learner. They cooked meals together, read books aloud by the fire, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. Katherine began to notice small changes in herself. She smiled more easily, laughed more often. The constant fear that had plagued her since coming to Park City began to fade, replaced by a sense of security she had not felt in years. She still worked hard at her sewing, still worried about money, but knowing that Ryder was there, that she had a friend she could count on, made everything more bearable. Ryder seemed to change too. He came into town more often, always finding an excuse to stop by the boarding house and check on Katherine. He brought her firewood when her supply ran low, drove her to the general store when she needed supplies, and once, when she was sick with a cold, brought her chicken soup and sat with her until she felt better. His ranch hands teased him mercilessly about his frequent trips to town, but Ryder just smiled and ignored them. In late January, Park City was hit by a fierce blizzard. Snow fell for 3 days straight, piling up in drifts taller than a man. The temperature dropped so low that water froze in indoor buckets. Mrs. Morrison kept fires burning in all the rooms, but Katherine's small room was still bitterly cold. She wrapped herself in every blanket she owned and tried to work on her sewing, but her fingers were too stiff to hold a needle properly. On the 3rd day of the blizzard, there was a knock on her door. Katherine struggled out of her cocoon of blankets and opened it to find Ryder standing in the hallway, covered in snow. "What are you doing here?" Katherine gasped. "You should not have ridden through this storm." "I was worried about you," Ryder said simply. His face was red from the cold and snow clung to his coat and hat. "I know your room is not well insulated and I thought you might need help." Katherine felt her heart clench. "You could have died riding through that blizzard." "But I did not," Ryder pointed out, "and I am here now." "Let me see your stove." Before Katherine could protest, Ryder was inside her room examining the small stove with a critical eye. He opened the door and peered inside, then shook his head. "This is not hot enough. You need more firewood, and you need to keep the fire burning hotter." "I have been trying to conserve wood," Katherine admitted. "I do not know when I will be able to get more." Ryder looked at her, his blue eyes serious. "Katherine, you cannot conserve yourself to death. I brought more wood. It is downstairs in the wagon. And I am not leaving here until your room is warm enough that I do not worry about you freezing." For the next hour, Ryder made multiple trips up and down the stairs, hauling armloads of firewood. He stacked it neatly in the corner of Katherine's room until she had enough to last for weeks. Then he rebuilt her fire, stoking it until the stove glowed red and warmth began to fill the small space. Katherine watched him work, too moved to speak. No one had ever taken care of her like this, not since her parents died. When the room was finally warm, Ryder sat heavily on her chair, exhausted from his efforts. Katherine poured him the last of her coffee and handed him the cup. "You should not have done this," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I am so grateful you did." "I told you I wanted to be your friend," Ryder said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Friends take care of each other." "You have done so much more for me than I have done for you," Katherine said. "I feel like I am taking advantage of your kindness." Ryder set down his cup and looked at her intently. "Katherine, do you trust me?" The question surprised her. "Yes," she said after a moment. "I do trust you." "Then trust me when I say that your friendship means more to me than you realize," Ryder said. "These past few weeks, getting to know you, spending time with you, have been the happiest I have been in years. You are not taking advantage of anything. You are giving me something precious, something I did not even know I was missing." Katherine felt tears well up in her eyes. "What am I giving you?" "Companionship," Ryder said softly. "Connection. Someone to share my thoughts with, someone who listens and understands. Do you know how rare that is? Most people go their whole lives without finding someone they can truly talk to. I found that with you, Katherine. So please stop thinking you owe me something or that you are a burden. You are a gift." A tear slipped down Katherine's cheek and she wiped it away quickly. "You are going to make me cry." "That is all right," Ryder said gently. "Sometimes crying is good." Katherine laughed through her tears. "How did you get so wise?" "Tom," Ryder said. "He used to tell me that the key to a good life was not money or success, but relationships. People are what matter," he said. "Everything else is just details." Katherine moved to sit on the edge of her bed, closer to Ryder. "He sounds like he was a wonderful man." "He was. I wish you could have met him. He would have liked you." They sat in comfortable silence, the warmth from the stove wrapping around them like a blanket. Outside, the blizzard continued to rage, but inside Katherine's small room, everything felt safe and peaceful. "Can I ask you something?" Katherine said after a while. "Anything." "Why are you not married? Truly, I mean." "You said you were too busy with the ranch, but I think there is more to it than that." Ryder was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "I suppose the real answer is that I have not met the right person. I have met women who were nice enough, pretty enough, but there was never that spark, that sense of rightness. Tom used to tell me about how he knew his wife was the one the first time he talked to her. He said it was like coming home after a long journey. I want that, Katherine. I want to feel like I have come home." Katherine's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Ryder could hear it. "And have you ever felt that way, with anyone?" Ryder looked at her and the intensity in his eyes made Katherine's breath catch. "Yes," he said quietly. "I have." "Who?" Katherine whispered, though she already knew the answer. "You," Ryder said. "From the moment I saw you in Henderson's store, standing there so brave and proud even though you were scared, I felt something. And every time I see you, that feeling gets stronger. You feel like home to me, Katherine." Katherine could not breathe, could not think. All she could do was stare at Ryder, at the honesty and vulnerability in his face. "I feel the same way," she finally managed to say. "I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it was too soon, too fast, but I cannot help it. When I am with you, I feel safe. I feel happy. I feel like myself again." Ryder stood and crossed the small room to kneel in front of Katherine, taking her hands in his. His hands were warm and rough from work, and Katherine clung to them like a lifeline. "I do not want to rush you," Ryder said. "I know you have been through a lot, and I know you need time. But I need you to know how I feel. I am falling in love with you, Katherine. I think I have been falling in love with you since the day we met." Katherine's tears were falling freely now, but they were tears of joy. "I am falling in love with you too," she said. "I did not think I would ever feel this way about anyone. I thought love was something that happened to other people, not to me. But then you appeared in that store and everything changed." Ryder reached up and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. "So what do we do now?" "I do not know," Katherine admitted. "I have never been in love before." "Neither have I," Ryder said with a soft laugh. "I suppose we figure it out together." Katherine leaned forward and rested her forehead against Ryder's, their breath mingling in the small space between them. "I would like that." They stayed like that for a long moment, savoring the closeness, the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. Then Ryder pulled back slightly, his expression turning serious. "Katherine, I want to court you properly. I want to do this right. I want everyone in Park City to know that you are my girl if you will have me." "I will have you," Katherine said, smiling through her tears. "But what about propriety? What will people say when they find out we have been spending so much time alone together?" "Let them say what they want," Ryder said firmly. "I do not care about gossip, but if it bothers you, we can make sure we have chaperones. We can do things the proper way. Whatever makes you comfortable." Katherine thought about Mrs. Morrison's disapproval, about the judgmental looks she sometimes got from the women in town. Then she thought about Ryder's kindness, his integrity, the way he made her feel valued and cherished. "I do not care what people say either," she decided. "As long as I have you, nothing else matters." Ryder's smile was brilliant. "Then let us do this right. Let me court you, Katherine Ruth. Let me take you to dances and socials. Let me introduce you to my friends. Let me show everyone what an incredible woman you are." "And then what?" Katherine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "And then, when the time is right, I will ask you to marry me," Ryder said. "And I hope with everything in me that you will say yes." Katherine's heart felt like it might burst. "I think I might," she said softly. Ryder leaned in slowly, giving Katherine plenty of time to pull away if she wanted. But she did not want to pull away. She wanted to kiss him, had been wanting to kiss him for weeks. When their lips finally met, it was soft and sweet and perfect. Katherine felt like she was floating, like all the pain and hardship of the past year had been worth it because it led her to this moment, to this man. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "I should probably go," Ryder said reluctantly. "The storm is still bad and I need to get back to the ranch before dark." "Please be careful," Katherine said, not wanting to let go of his hands. "Promise me you will be careful." "I promise," Ryder assured her. "And I will be back as soon as the storm clears. We have a lot to talk about." "We do," Katherine agreed. She walked him to the door and they kissed once more before he left, this kiss lingering and full of promise. After Ryder was gone, Katherine stood in her warm room, touching her lips where he had kissed her. Everything had changed in the space of a few hours. She had gone from being alone and frightened to being loved and hopeful. It felt like a dream, but the warmth in her heart told her it was real. The blizzard finally ended 2 days later, and true to his word, Ryder returned to town as soon as the roads were passable. This time, He came to the boarding house in the early afternoon, dressed in his best clothes, and formally asked Mrs. Morrison if he could court Katherine. Mrs. Morrison, who had softened toward Ryder after hearing how he had brought Katherine firewood during the storm, gave her approval with only minimal scolding about propriety. From that day forward, Ryder and Katherine were together as often as they could manage. Ryder took Katherine to a church social, where she met his friends and ranch hands. He took her to a dance at the town hall, where they waltzed under paper lanterns, and Katherine felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. He introduced her to his cattle, his horses, his land, sharing every part of his life with her. Katherine, in turn, shared her world with Ryder. She showed him her sewing projects, taught him about different fabrics and stitches, introduced him to her few friends in town. She told him stories about her childhood, about her mother's garden and her father's stubborn determination. She let him see the parts of herself she usually kept hidden, the fears and insecurities she rarely admitted to anyone. February arrived, bringing with it slightly warmer temperatures and the first hints that spring was coming. Katherine's sewing business picked up as she had predicted, and she was finally able to start saving money. She insisted on giving Ryder the $13.40 he had paid to Henderson, but Ryder refused. "We had an agreement," he reminded her. "You were going to pay me back with friendship, and you have given me so much more than that." "But I want to contribute," Katherine protested. "If we are going to have a future together, I do not want to start it by being in debt to you." "You are not in debt to me," Ryder said firmly. "But if it makes you feel better, save that money for our future. Save it for our wedding or our home or whatever else we need." "Our wedding," Katherine repeated, feeling a thrill run through her. "Is that still something you want?" Ryder pulled her close, right there in the middle of the street, not caring who saw them. "Katherine, that is the thing I want most in the world. I want to marry you. I want you to be my wife, my partner, my best friend. I want to build a life with you." "When?" Katherine asked, her hands resting on his chest, feeling his heartbeat under her palms. "Whenever you are ready," Ryder said. "Tomorrow, next month, next year, I will wait as long as you need." Katherine thought about everything she had been through, all the loneliness and struggle that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the girl she had been when she arrived in Park City, frightened and desperate, and the woman she was now, confident and loved. "I do not want to wait," she said. "I have waited my whole life to find someone like you. Why should we wait any longer?" Ryder's face lit up with joy. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying yes," Katherine said, laughing. "Yes, I will marry you. Yes, I want to be your wife. Yes to all of it." Ryder let out a whoop that made people on the street turn and stare. He picked Katherine up and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he finally set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, not caring that they had an audience. "We need to plan a wedding," Ryder said when they finally pulled apart. "Where do you want to get married? What kind of wedding do you want?" "I do not need anything fancy," Katherine said. "Just something simple. Maybe at the church with our friends there. That would be perfect." "Whatever you want," Ryder agreed. "Should we wait until spring? Or do you want to do it sooner?" Katherine thought about returning to her cold little room at the boarding house, about spending more months alone when she could be starting her life with Ryder. "Let us do it soon," she said. "As soon as we can arrange it." They went straight to the church to talk to the pastor, a kind man named Reverend Thompson who had been in Park City for nearly a decade. He agreed to marry them in 3 weeks, giving them time to make the necessary preparations. Katherine would need a dress, and they would need to arrange for witnesses and a small reception. The next 3 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Katherine worked furiously on her wedding dress, a simple but elegant gown made of cream-colored wool. It was the finest thing she had ever sewn, with careful stitching and delicate details. Mrs. Morrison helped her, offering advice and encouragement, and even lending Katherine some lace for the sleeves. Ryder, meanwhile, prepared the ranch house for Katherine's arrival. He cleaned every corner, repaired anything that was broken, and even built a new bookshelf for Katherine's books. His ranch hands helped, teasing him good-naturedly about being so nervous over a woman. But they could see how happy Ryder was, and they were genuinely pleased that he had found someone. On the day before the wedding, Ryder came to town with a surprise. He had gone to Henderson's general store and bought everything Katherine might need for the household: fabric, thread, cooking supplies, even a few small luxuries like scented soap and ribbons. He presented them to Katherine with a shy smile. "I want you to have everything you need," he explained. "I want you to feel like the ranch is your home from the moment you arrive." Katherine was overwhelmed by the gesture. "You did not have to do all this." "I wanted to," Ryder said. "I want to take care of you, Katherine. I want you to never have to worry about whether you will have enough food or firewood or anything else. I want you to feel safe and secure." "I do feel safe with you," Katherine assured him. "Safer than I have ever felt." The wedding took place on a cold but sunny morning in early March. Katherine walked down the aisle of the small church, wearing her cream-colored dress, her hair pinned up with Mrs. Morrison's pearl combs. Ryder waited at the altar in a new suit, his eyes shining with emotion as he watched her approach. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. Katherine and Ryder exchanged vows in front of Reverend Thompson, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Ryder kissed Katherine with such tenderness that several of the women in attendance wiped away tears. The reception was held at the boarding house, with Mrs. Morrison providing food and drink. It was a small gathering, just a few dozen people, but it felt warm and joyful. Katherine's friends from town mingled with Ryder's ranch hands and friends, and everyone seemed genuinely happy for the newlyweds. As the sun began to set, Ryder and Katherine said their goodbyes and climbed into the wagon for the ride to the ranch. This time, Katherine was not a visitor. She was going home. The ranch house looked beautiful in the twilight, with warm light glowing from the windows. Ryder carried Katherine over the threshold, both of them laughing at the silliness and romance of the gesture. He set her down gently in the middle of the main room, and they stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Hartford?" Ryder asked, his arms wrapped around her waist. "It feels perfect," Katherine said honestly. "It feels like everything I have been through was worth it because it brought me to you." "I feel the same way," Ryder said. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I promise I will spend every day making you happy. I promise I will always be there for you, no matter what. I promise I will love you until the day I die." "I promise the same," Katherine said, her voice thick with emotion. "I love you, Ryder. I love you so much." They spent their wedding night wrapped in each other's arms, talking and laughing and making plans for the future. They talked about the children they wanted to have, the improvements they wanted to make to the ranch, the life they would build together. And when they finally fell asleep, it was with smiles on their faces and hope in their hearts. The next few months were some of the happiest of Katherine's life. She settled into her role as a rancher's wife with surprising ease. She learned how to tend the chickens Ryder bought for her, how to make cheese and butter, how to preserve meat and vegetables for the winter. She continued to sew, taking commissions from people in town and saving the money for improvements to the ranch. Ryder, for his part, was the husband Katherine had always dreamed of having. He was kind and patient, always willing to listen to her ideas and opinions. He treated her as a true partner, consulting her on decisions about the ranch and valuing her input. and he loved her with a depth and constancy that took Catherine's breath away. In late spring, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. She told Ryder one evening after dinner, her hands trembling with nervousness and excitement. Ryder's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, just like he had done the day she agreed to marry him, his face alight with joy. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Katherine asked, though she could see the answer written all over his face. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Ryder said. "I am thrilled, I am terrified, I am grateful. Katherine, you have given me everything I never knew I wanted." The pregnancy was not easy. Katherine suffered from terrible nausea in the early months, and the summer heat made her miserable. But Ryder was there for her every step of the way, bringing her cool water when she felt sick, fanning her when she was hot, rubbing her feet when they ached. His tenderness during those difficult months only made Katherine love him more. In December, almost exactly a year after Ryder had paid Katherine's bill at Henderson's store, Katherine went into labor. It was a long and difficult labor, lasting nearly 20 hours. Ryder stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her brow, encouraging her when she felt like she could not go on. And when their son was finally born, a healthy boy with a powerful set of lungs, Ryder wept with joy and relief. They named him Thomas, after the man who had given Ryder his start in life. Little Thomas was the image of his father, with dark hair and blue eyes, and from the moment he was born, he had both his parents wrapped around his tiny finger. The years that followed were filled with hard work, challenges, and abundant joy. The ranch prospered under Ryder's capable management and Katherine's clever planning. They expanded the herd, built a new barn, and hired more ranch hands. Katherine's sewing business grew as well, and she became known throughout Park City for the quality of her work. 2 years after Thomas was born, Katherine gave birth to a daughter they named Mary, a beautiful child with her mother's gray eyes and gentle disposition. 3 years after that came another son, Samuel, who was more mischievous than his siblings combined. The house that had once seemed so quiet and empty was now filled with the noise and chaos of family life. Through it all, Ryder and Katherine's love only deepened. They had their disagreements, as all couples do, but they always talked through their problems and never went to bed angry. They supported each other through hard times, celebrated each other's successes, and never forgot the friendship that had brought them together in the first place. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ryder surprised Katherine with a trip to Salt Lake City. They left the children with Mrs. Morrison, who had become like a grandmother to them, and spent 3 glorious days exploring the city. On their last evening, they went to a nice restaurant, something they rarely did, and over dinner, Ryder pulled out a small velvet box. "I never gave you a proper engagement ring," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate gold band with a small diamond. "I wanted to do that now." Katherine's eyes filled with tears as Ryder slipped the ring onto her finger, next to the simple gold band she had worn for 10 years. "It is beautiful," she whispered, "but you did not have to do this." "I wanted to," Ryder said. "I wanted you to have something that shows the world how much I love you, though honestly, I do not think any ring could really capture that." Katherine reached across the table and took his hand. "Do you remember the day we met, when you paid my bill at Henderson's store?" "Of course I remember," Ryder said. "That was the day my life changed." "Mine too," Katherine said. "I was so scared that day, so alone, I thought I would never be happy again. And then you appeared like an answer to a prayer I did not even know I had prayed. You saved me, Ryder." "You saved me too," Ryder said seriously. "I did not even realize how lonely I was until I met you. You brought light into my life, Katherine. You gave me a reason to build something bigger than just a ranch. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. I am the man I am today because of you." They sat in the restaurant, holding hands across the table, remembering everything they had been through together. The hard times and the good times, the struggles and the triumphs, the ordinary moments that made up a life shared. "I would do it all again," Katherine said softly. "Every hard day, every moment of doubt and fear, I would go through it all again if I knew it would lead me to you." "So would I," Ryder agreed. 1,000 times over. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. Thomas grew into a strong, capable young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Mary became a talented seamstress like her mother, creating beautiful quilts and garments that sold throughout the territory. Samuel, ever the adventurer, decided to become a lawman, keeping peace in the rough mining towns of Utah. Ryder and Katherine aged together gracefully, their love remaining constant through the changing seasons of life. They saw their children marry and start families of their own, filling the ranch with grandchildren who called them Grandpa Rye and Grandma Kate. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, mourned losses and welcomed new beginnings, always side by side. On the 20th anniversary of the day Ryder paid Katherine's bill at Henderson's store, they returned to Park City together. Much had changed in the town. New buildings had gone up, new people had moved in, and even Henderson's general store had been sold to new owners. But the church where they were married still stood, and they walked past it hand in hand, remembering. "You ever think about how different our lives could have been?" Katherine asked as they strolled down the street. "If you had not been in that store that day, if you had not offered to help me." "I think about it sometimes," Ryder admitted. "But I do not believe it was chance, Katherine. I think we were meant to find each other. I think everything in our lives, all the pain and struggle we both went through, was leading us to that moment." "You think it was fate?" Katherine asked, intrigued. "I think it was friendship," Ryder said. "You remember what I told you that day, that you could pay me back with friendship. I meant it. I was looking for a friend, someone to share my life with, and I found you. And that friendship became the foundation for everything else. The love, the marriage, the family. It all started with friendship." Katherine leaned her head against Ryder's shoulder as they walked. "Best investment you ever made." "Absolutely," Ryder agreed with a laugh. "Best $13.40 I ever spent." They continued walking through Park City, pointing out changes and reminiscing about the past. They stopped by the boarding house where Katherine had lived, which was now a thriving hotel. Mrs. Morrison had passed away 5 years earlier, but her daughter ran the place now, and she invited Ryder and Katherine in for tea and conversation. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and pink, Ryder and Katherine made their way back to their wagon. But before they left town, Ryder drove them to one more place, the new general store that stood where Henderson's had been. "Want to go in?" Ryder asked with a mischievous smile. Katherine laughed. "Why would we do that? I do not know. For old time's sake. To see if the new owners are nicer than Henderson." They went inside, and Katherine was struck by how different it looked. The shelves were better organized, the store was cleaner, and the man behind the counter greeted them with a genuine smile. They browsed for a few minutes, not really looking for anything in particular, just enjoying the nostalgia. As they were leaving, the shopkeeper called out to them. "You folks have a good evening now. And remember, we always extend credit to our regular customers. Times can be hard, and we believe in helping our neighbors." Ryder and Katherine looked at each other and smiled. "Times are changing," Katherine said once they were back outside. "For the better," Ryder agreed. He helped Katherine into the wagon and climbed up beside her. Ready to go home? Always, Katherine said, snuggling close to him as he picked up the reins. As they drove back to the ranch, the stars coming out overhead, Katherine thought about everything that had happened since that cold December day 20 years ago. She thought about the frightened young woman she had been, standing in Henderson's store with $5 and no hope. She thought about the kind cowboy who had appeared like a miracle, offering not just money but friendship. She thought about how that friendship had blossomed into love, how that love had built a family, how that family had created a legacy. "What are you thinking about?" Ryder asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Katherine said. "How blessed. I have you, our children, our grandchildren, this beautiful life we have built together. I have everything I ever dreamed of and so much more." "I feel the same way," Ryder said. He was quiet for a moment, then added, "You know what Tom used to tell me? He said the measure of a good life is not how much money you make or how much land you own. It is how many people you love and how many people love you back. By that measure, we are the richest people in Utah." Katherine laughed, wiping away a happy tear. "We absolutely are." They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes from years of companionship. When they finally reached the ranch, they could see lights in the windows of the house, where their oldest son Thomas and his family were staying for the week. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Katherine could smell dinner cooking. "Home," Ryder said with satisfaction as he helped Katherine down from the wagon. "Home," Katherine echoed, looking at the house where she had spent the happiest years of her life. They walked inside together, hand in hand, just as they had done on their wedding night so many years ago. Their grandchildren ran to greet them, clamoring for attention and stories. Thomas and his wife were setting the table for dinner. The house was warm and full of life and love. As Katherine stood in the middle of the chaos, surrounded by her family, she caught Ryder's eye across the room. He smiled at her, that same warm smile that had first made her feel safe all those years ago. And in that smile, Katherine saw everything. The past they had shared, the present they were living, and the future that still stretched before them. Later that night, after the grandchildren were in bed and the house was quiet, Ryder and Katherine sat by the fireplace, enjoying the peaceful evening. Katherine was working on a quilt, her needle moving in and out of the fabric with practiced ease. Ryder was reading a book, occasionally reading interesting passages aloud to Katherine. "You think our children understand how lucky they are?" Katherine asked suddenly, setting down her sewing. "To grow up with so much love and security, to never know the fear and desperation we knew." Ryder considered the question. "I think they understand in their own way. We have told them our stories about Missouri and Texas, about how we met and fell in love. But you are right, they did not live through it. They cannot fully understand what it felt like to be where we were." "I am glad they do not understand," Katherine said. "I am glad they have never had to stand in a store and be refused credit because they did not have enough money. I am glad they have never had to wonder where their next meal would come from. We worked hard to give them a better life, and we succeeded." "We did," Ryder agreed. "And I hope they will do the same for their children, each generation building on what came before, making life a little easier, a little better." Katherine resumed her sewing, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Katherine said, "I was thinking we should write everything down. Our story, I mean. How we met, how we built the ranch, how we raised our family. I think our grandchildren and great-grandchildren would want to know." "That is a wonderful idea," Ryder said enthusiastically. "Though you should be the one to write it. You are much better with words than I am." "We will write it together," Katherine decided. "It is our story, after all, both of ours," and so they did. Over the next year, Ryder and Katherine spent their evenings writing down their memories, creating a record of their life together. They wrote about the hard times and the good times, the laughter and the tears, the ordinary moments that had somehow added up to an extraordinary life. They wrote about the power of kindness, the importance of friendship, and the transformative nature of love. When they finally finished, they bound the pages together and gave copies to each of their children. "This is your inheritance," Katherine told them. "Not just the ranch or the money we have saved, but this story. The story of what can happen when two people find each other and choose to build a life together. Remember it, learn from it, and someday pass it on to your own children." Thomas, Mary, and Samuel read their parents' story with tears in their eyes, gaining a new appreciation for everything Ryder and Katherine had overcome. They promised to treasure the story and share it with future generations, ensuring that the legacy of their parents' love would never be forgotten. The years continued their steady march forward. Ryder and Katherine grew older, their hair turning silver, their steps growing slower. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, deepened by time and tested by challenges overcome together. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. It was a joyous celebration held at the ranch, with food and music and dancing. At one point, Ryder asked Katherine to dance, and despite their age, they waltzed around the room with the grace of longtime partners who knew each other's every move. 40 years, Ryder said as they danced. "Can you believe it?" "Sometimes it feels like 40 days, Katherine replied. "Other times it feels like we have always been together." "I know what you mean," Ryder said. "I cannot remember what my life was like before you. I know I existed, I know I did things and went places, but it all feels so empty compared to the life we have built together." "That is because we were always meant to be together," Katherine said firmly. "That day in Henderson's store, that was not an accident, that was destiny." "I love you," Ryder said, pulling her closer. "I love you more now than I did on our wedding day, and I loved you desperately even then." "I love you too," Katherine said. "Always and forever." They danced until the song ended, then stood in the middle of the room, holding each other close while their family watched with warm smiles. This was what love looked like, their presence seemed to say. This was what it meant to commit to another person for life. This was what made all the struggles worthwhile. As the evening drew to a close and their guests began to leave, Katherine and Ryder stood on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over the mountains. The view never got old, no matter how many times they saw it. The land stretched out before them, beautiful and wild, a testament to everything they had built together. "We did it," Katherine said softly. "We really did it. We took nothing and turned it into this." She gestured at the ranch, at the family gathering their things inside, at the life they had created. "We did," Ryder agreed. "And you know what? I would do it all again. Every hard day, every setback, every challenge. I would go through all of it again just to end up here with you, surrounded by the family we created and the life we built." Katherine leaned against him, feeling his solid strength supporting her. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day? That I could pay you back with friendship?" "I remember." "I think I still owe you," Katherine said with a smile. "I do not think I could ever give you enough friendship to truly repay what you gave me that day." Ryder turned to face her, his weathered hands cupping her face gently. "Katherine, you gave me more than friendship. You gave me love. You gave me a family. You gave me a purpose and a reason to get up every morning. You gave me 40 years of joy that I never thought I would have. If anyone is in debt here, it is me." "Then we are even," Katherine decided. "We have given each other everything, and we owe each other nothing except our continued love and commitment." "I can live with that," Ryder said, kissing her forehead tenderly. They stood on the porch until the stars came out, bright and numerous in the clear Utah sky. Inside, they could hear their family talking and laughing, the sounds of life and love continuing. And in that moment, standing there with Ryder's arm around her shoulders and 40 years of memories behind them, Katherine felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude. She thought about the young woman she had been, standing in a general store with her last $5, facing a winter that might kill her. She thought about how close she had come to giving up, to letting despair win. And she thought about how one act of kindness, one gesture from a stranger, had changed the entire course of her life. Ryder had saved her that day. There was no doubt about that. But she had saved him too, in her own way. She had given him the family and love he craved, the companionship that made a house into a home. They had saved each other, really, two lonely souls finding solace and joy in one another. "What are you thinking about?" Ryder asked, as he had asked so many times over the years. "I am thinking about friendship," Katherine said. "About how you were right all along. Friendship is the most valuable thing in the world. Everything else, the romance and the passion and the excitement, that all comes and goes. But friendship, true friendship that lasts forever." "You are my best friend," Ryder said simply. "You always have been from the day we met. That is why our marriage has worked so well. We are partners, companions, friends first and foremost." "And lovers," Katherine added with a mischievous smile. "And lovers," Ryder agreed, laughing. "And parents, and grandparents, and every other role we have taken on together. But yes, friends above all else." They went inside as the night grew colder, closing the door on the darkness and stepping into the warmth and light of their home. Their family had mostly departed, leaving just Thomas and his wife, who were staying the night. They said their good nights and retired to their bedroom, the same room they had shared for 40 years. As they lay in bed that night, Ryder holding Katherine close the way he always did, Katherine thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The struggles and the triumphs, the tears and the laughter, the ordinary days that had somehow accumulated into an extraordinary life. She thought about the children they had raised, the grandchildren who carried on their legacy, the great-grandchildren who would tell their story to future generations. "Ryder," she whispered into the darkness. "Yes, my love, thank you." "For what?" "For paying my bill that day. For asking for friendship instead of money. For loving me even when I did not think I was worthy of love. For giving me this life, this family, this home. For everything." Ryder tightened his arms around her. "Thank you for accepting my help, for giving me your friendship, for loving me back. For making every day of the past 40 years worth living. For everything." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. Outside, the Utah night was cold and dark, but inside the ranch house, warmth and love reigned supreme, a testament to the power of kindness and the enduring strength of true love. The story could end there, with Ryder and Katherine content in their twilight years, surrounded by the family and life they built together. But their story did not end with their lives. It continued through their children and grandchildren, through the lessons they taught and the love they shared, through the ranch that still stood as a monument to their dedication and partnership. Years later, when both Ryder and Katherine had passed on peacefully in their old age, their children gathered to divide the estate. There was the ranch itself, now worth considerably more than it had been when Ryder inherited it. There were savings and investments that Ryder and Katherine had carefully managed over the years. There were personal items, furniture, and keepsakes. But the most valuable thing they found was the written record of their parents' story. The account of how a destitute young woman and a kind-hearted cowboy had found each other in a general store and built a life together. The children made copies for all the grandchildren, and those grandchildren made copies for their children, until the story of Ryder and Katherine Hartford became part of the family's oral history, told and retold at reunions and gatherings. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through generations, each caretaker adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation that Ryder and Katherine had laid. And in the front room of the ranch house, in a place of honor, hung a framed copy of the first page of Ryder and Katherine's written story, with Ryder's handwriting at the top. This is a story about friendship, kindness, and love. May all who read it remember that the smallest gesture can change a life. In Park City, the story became something of a local legend. People would point out the location where Henderson's old store had stood and tell the tale of the cowboy who paid a stranger's bill and asked for friendship in return. It became a reminder that kindness mattered, that helping others was never wasted, that one person could make a difference in another person's life. And somewhere, in whatever realm souls go after death, Ryder and Katherine Hartford were together still, hand in hand, knowing that their love had left a mark on the world. They had started with nothing but hope and ended with everything that mattered. They had proven that love could overcome hardship, that friendship was the foundation of all good things, and that sometimes the best investments we make are not in land or cattle or money, but in other people. Their story was not just about survival or success, though it was certainly about both of those things. It was about the transformative power of human connection, about how we can save each other simply by being present, by offering help when it is needed, by choosing kindness over indifference. It was about how the greatest riches in life are not material but relational, measured not in dollars but in love shared and received. Ryder Hartford had walked into a general store on a cold December day in 1878 and changed a life with $13.40. But what he really gave Katherine Ruth was something far more valuable. He gave her hope, friendship, and eventually, love. And in return, she gave him the same. Together, they built something beautiful and lasting, a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. And it all started with a simple act of kindness. A cowboy who paid a stranger's bill and asked for friendship in return. In a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving, especially in the rough territory of the American West in the late 1800s, Ryder and Katherine proved that goodness still existed, that love could flourish even in the hardest circumstances, and that the best things in life often come when we least expect them. Their story reminds us that we are all connected, that our actions ripple out in ways we cannot always see, and that the simple choice to help another person can change not just one life but many lives, echoing through generations. It reminds us that friendship is valuable, that kindness matters, and that love, when nurtured and cherished, can overcome any obstacle. This is the story of Katherine Ruth and Ryder Hartford, a seamstress and a cowboy who found each other in a cold Utah winter and built a warm, loving life together. It is a story of struggle and triumph, of fear overcome by courage, of loneliness replaced by companionship. But most of all, it is a story about the simple, profound truth that we all need each other, and that the greatest gift we can give or receive is not money or possessions, but our presence, our care, and our love. And so their story ends where it began, with kindness, with friendship, and with the knowledge that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places and the most generous hearts.